I've been interested in the Monster Hunter games for a very long time now. They seemed fun, but whenever I thought about starting them, I'd sit down and read a bit about the gameplay, which would lead to an almost instant surrender because I was not willing to invest the insane amount of time it would take to beat them. People always spoke about how you have to prepare for each different monster, how you would have to navigate tons of menus, look at tons of stats, craft insane amounts of items, consume food, etc., only to be properly prepared for the fight. So for the most part, I steered clear of these games. A few weeks back, however, I had read somewhere that the Iceborne expansion actually provides the player with a special armor and weapon, which are effectively good enough to carry you for the whole main game without having to deal with the extreme amounts of number crunching and all the other stuff in order to stand a chance against the monsters. That really appealed to me, so I pitched the idea to my wife and a few friends, and they were all ready to board the hype train with me, especially since one of them owns the game and was waiting for someone to play it with. When I first started the game, I was delighted to find out that it supports 21:9 Ultrawide natively. Unfortunately, it did not support 32:9, meaning that I had to get a fix for that. Sadly, the aforementioned fix only works with DirectX 11, and while it is okay for me since my frame rates remain stable, I've read that a lot of people simply can't run the game unless using DirectX 12 due to how poorly it would perform for them. I'm conflicted here since I know that the devs could have easily implemented a native 32:9 support just as they did with the 21:9, but given that it's a fairly rare aspect ratio at this point, I am also reluctant to criticize them too harshly for not doing it. At least we got native 21:9, which is a great start. I did mention the Iceborne expansion of the game, and I want to address another improvement which made the core game more attractive to me as a whole. In the original Monster Hunter world, you had two difficulty settings. You play alone or you play in a group. If you did play with someone else, the difficulty would switch to the multiplayer one regardless of how many people actually were teaming up for you for a mission. This means that playing with one other person used to be the hardest possible choice, since the difficulty was the same for a two-man squad as it would be for a full squad of 4 players due to the fact that the game would not scale down. Iceborne changes this by introducing a new difficulty setting which activates when there are only 2 players fighting the monster. This means that even if my friends were not online, I could simply ask my wife to join me and we would still be able to handle whatever the game threw at us. Yes, you could play with randoms and I'm aware of that, but it was not something I was interested in. So we made our characters in the relatively good character creator and started with the tutorial section of the game. My first huge irritation was triggered only minutes after Monster Hunter start, when I came to realize that my character can't speak. Every NPC in a cutscene within this game will actually speak with a voice, but our character will not. He can smile or nod like an idiot, but never actually answer with words. This is especially annoying since the game provides you with lots of cutscenes in which a response from your character would be logical given how they are approached by the NPCs and the fact that they are sometimes even asked questions to which they simply never provide answers. There's no excuse for this since it's not too difficult to find one voice actor for a potential male character and one for a potential female. If you do play in co-op, you always see your own character anyway when it comes to talking to others, and it always feels like you are the only one. The others are just there to help you. So it's not like there would be 4 people in a squad and a cutscene would start and all 4 characters would have to talk. No, everyone sees themselves as the main protagonist. So if money was a concern here, which it definitely is not because it's a AAA title, then they could have hired cheaper voice actors and simply used the money they saved from that to hire additional voice actors for the protagonists. We have some pretty famous and above all expensive voice actor for some of the NPCs, which were by far not necessary, especially considering the lame narrative present here. It saddens me greatly to have to admit this, but I know for a fact that a few players actually consider silent characters to be a better choice for role-playing reasons. While I could spend the next 10 minutes explaining why this definitely isn't so, I will instead suggest something that would solve this issue easily for all parties. Why not simply add an option to make a protagonist silent? That way people who claim they prefer playing as a mute can enjoy imagining the voice of their character while reading the subtitles, while the rest of us can simply enjoy the full experience. A silent protagonist looks stupid, completely ruins the immersion, and is the most obvious way modern devs are saving money. Voice all protagonists and add an option to make them silent. Everyone wins, it's not hard, it's not a lot of work. I would bet money that almost nobody would use such a function, but that's a different story. Anyway, with that having been said, I want to go go back to telling you how I planned on playing with my friends. Turns out you can't really co-op the story mode, at least not right away. The game will only allow players to join another one's hunt if they had completed that particular quest in the past for themselves. This means that we would all have to start our mission solo, then kill the monster, and whoever is slowest has their friends join to help once they're done with the mission for themselves. You can't actually play together the first time around. This was extremely disappointing to us because we didn't want to play through the game alone and then replay the missions together. It just sucks to have to do every mission again. While it is true that you will have to grind and kill the same monsters over and over again if you want to get some of the better gear, especially once you reach the expansion, I don't see why they could not have allowed for us to do this together from the start. Fighting as a team is not only more fun but also makes for some epic moments when you coordinate your attacks. Not to mention that my wife intentionally picked a ranged weapon while another friend was initially considering playing as a tank exactly for that reason. So over the next few days I decided to basically play ahead in order to be able to at least help my wife with her progress so that she doesn't have to play on her own. That idea was good on paper, but it turns out I didn't account for the fact that she got bored after around 6 hours of playing. Things only got worse when my friends also didn't seem too interested in playing the game anymore. Once they realized that each mission had to be completed solo first, it killed their motivation entirely. I mean, they could have taken some randoms to assist them, but the problem with these early missions wasn't really that they're hard, it was just that we really wanted to play together. It doesn't help that the game is in essence very repetitive in its gameplay loop. You kill monsters, take parts, craft new things, and kill some more monsters. Mostly the same ones. But let me tell you about the other things I did not like. The first issue I have to mention is the fact that the player gets bombarded by unskippable cutscenes within the first few hours of the game. Monster Hunter World really wants to tell a story. It doesn't matter that it's a bad, cheesy, and boring one. It wants to tell it, you have to see it all. The second type of cutscenes is arguably worse. Those are usually when you get some kind of a briefing before a mission, and they do require you to press a button after each spoken line in order to hear the next one. This means that you can't eat or check your phone while these play out, since you are expected to press a button for the next line to be spoken. It's effectively sentence by sentence, where you always click, 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 or press space or whatever. Any button really works, but it has to be you pressing a button. Why there's not an option to make the dialogue automatic is beyond me, especially since there are no choices or any other parts that will require active participation on behalf of the player. You're just part of the audience, you don't get to do anything, except of course press a button. Another thing I found annoying was the fact that the game saw it necessary to remind me which buttons to press in order to move on several different occasions, but it didn't bother to explain many key features at all. And when I say several different occasions, I'm talking different missions. If I'm not mistaken, the last time I saw the tutorial about WASD to be my movement keys on a mission that came maybe 5 hours into the game, which is absurd, you know, come on, of course I know what to move with. But they didn't, like I said, bother to teach me about important stuff like sharpening my weapon until way later, when I already knew about this because somehow I found out, maybe I googled it, I don't remember, there was a lot of googling going on. This is one of those games where you are expected to mostly learn stuff from the internet. I did mention that you are also expected to hunt monsters over and over again. This is normal. Just to give you an idea, I played the game for 110 hours, and at my 50th hour or so, I had already earned the achievement awarded for killing 100 large monsters. You will hunt these things to extinction, and I found it annoying that I can accept multiple hunting quests at once instead of having to do them one at a time. The main reason for this is the fact that each time you complete a quest, you have to return to town, take a new one, then travel back to the area where you will be hunting, meaning that you will have to wait for several loading screens. Well, I mean, one for you to go back, one for you to go there again, and while these might not be very long ones, it's still unnecessary and therefore annoying to me. The game basically has levels, some of which are save zones where you will craft, take and return quests, and customize yourself and your cat companion. The other levels are where you hunt. As the story progresses, you unlock a few more, and while you will be visiting the same places, I have to give them credit for being able to make it an interesting experience almost every time. First of all, you are not just a hunter but also a gatherer. You gather plants, ore, and even animals with your net and fishing rod, and you will need most of them since you are not only expected to craft your armor and weapon, but also various potions, ammunition, and lots of other helpful items, which again are mostly not necessary but really helpful when used properly. Naturally, the game will not teach you about these items, so either experiment and waste resources or use Google to figure things out. The hunt is your bread and butter, and here is where the game both shines and fails at the same time. Allow me to explain. First of all, whenever you are on a mission to actually hunt a specific monster, that monster will remain in the hunting zone until one of you is dead. Luckily for you, the game lets you die 3 times before you fail the mission. There are, however, other monsters which will roam the area and might even encounter you or the monster you're fighting. At first I assumed that having some other monster attack mine would be really useful, but came to realize that it's more of a pain in the ass than an advantage. The monsters will attack each other, but they will still perceive you as a serious threat and attack you too. This made little sense to me since you are usually a lot smaller than the wildlife around, meaning that it's a bit like 2 elephants fighting and occasionally going after a nearby cat which scratched them a few times. It gets much worse when a third monster arrives, because that one will ensure that chaos ensues on the battlefield. One of the major problems involved here is that the monsters are so large that they make it hard to orientate the camera properly if they're too close to you, and all of their attacks are usually area of effect attacks, so oftentimes while they attack each other they will be kicking your ass as well. And when there's 3 of them at one place, it usually gets really crowded, so it's not unlikely for you to get hit so many times by different monsters trying to bite mostly each other, or you as a matter of fact, because they will also target you. I've had a case where all 3 attacked me for some reason, that it will result in a death if not multiple ones. Unfortunately, the game has very clunky combat as well. When I first started it, I actually assumed it was a lot like Dark Souls, which, while punishing, is a game with a very solid combat system. Unfortunately, that first impression was completely wrong. Not only is there no proper lock-on target here, but your attacks have a certain Q feature to them, which means that if you press a button 3 times, your character will stand there and perform 3 strikes, even if the monster has moved aside and you are now only hitting air. The lack of lock-on makes this so much worse because it's pretty much a normal thing for you to wave your weapon without hitting anything. And I am saying there's no lock-on, but that's not exactly true. There is some sort of weird lock-on, but it doesn't lock on to the monster specifically. It locks on to specific parts of it, but then also keeps locking on to other monsters, so suddenly you just keep facing different things. I don't understand why this works like that, and I have not figured out a way to use it in any other way. And from what I've seen on the internet, nobody uses it, so it's probably not that useful, or at least not something that you can really rely on. I mainly use the greatsword for my playthrough and had to get used to really committing to my attacks, because I knew that if I missed, I would still be swinging like an idiot for a while before I am allowed to move again. The thing is, faster weapons suffer from the same problems, only there the swings are much quicker, meaning that you regain control faster and the problem is not quite as obvious. Just to give you an idea of how bad it is, I have played Dark Souls 3 with the double greatswords, which are super slow and clunky, and they still felt much better and more flexible than any weapon in Monster Hunter World. And since we have addressed the topic of combat problems, monsters have different attacks and some of them are much more dangerous than others. While they do build patterns, it's all still very random in nature. In over 100 hours, I have had quite a few deaths because a boss decided to spam several stun attacks one after another, causing a stun to death effect. When it happens, it feels incredibly cheap and unfair, especially when it happens right before the boss is about to die and you are on your last life, causing you to fail and have to replay the whole mission again. That's 40 minutes of your life you are not getting back. The thing is, once you get used to all those issues and you start to get the hang of things, the game becomes quite addictive. I even realized that the game is quite fun when played alone. However, as the hours passed, it became evident that the devs have missed numerous opportunities here. First of all, the monsters have different body zones which the player can focus and break. Breaking them creates a critical weakness which takes more damage and will also cause a part of the beast to drop during the fight. The most fun part to attack is definitely the tail of the monster, since almost all of them can be severed and looted during the fight. So let's start with these tails. Cutting off the tail usually means that you only cut off about half of it. All monsters will still continue to attack them with the remaining tail without issue. This is especially stupid with monsters which have claws on it or even have a sharp edge making it look like a blade. Even once you cut off the blade part of the tail, the monster will still attack you and do full damage with that same cut off blade, which shouldn't even be there. And when it comes to the other body parts such as the arms, legs, head, there the breaking effect is minimal as well. It would have been so much cooler if you could literally chop off the monster's legs or arms, causing it to drag on the floor, leave a trail of blood, etc. They could have made it so that crippling the monster makes it unable to use attacks with that appendage. As far as I remember, there was only one monster at the very end of the game which would stop using certain attacks once you break the horns on its head. I feel like the gameplay would be deeper and more interesting if the crippling and severing of limbs was more prominent and had more of an impact in the game, especially because for the most part these monsters don't even seem to change visually that much when you actually cripple some parts of their body. Not to mention that so many monsters have wings and will use them to fly away mid-fight, so you have to chase them. You can cripple the wings, but they still fly away, so these things definitely could be better. I mean, come on, if I cripple the wings it shouldn't be able to fly away, right? Still, the game manages to hook you in its loop, and just when the missions become insanely bland, it throws in some crossover missions. One with monsters from Final Fantasy and one with such from The Witcher 3. Yep, you heard me right, you even get to play as Geralt the Witcher himself. The best part here is that they didn't just throw him in there, they went all out. The fonts of the game change, the gameplay changes slightly, and Geralt is even voiced by his original voice actor. You get to talk to NPCs and start an investigation just like you would do in a real Witcher 3 mission. This is also where I want to mention something that I found very annoying in the game. Many NPC conversations are not voice acted. You just get written text. Luckily the mission with the Witcher is fully voice acted. The game even goes as far as to show you a special message which tells you that the mission is voice acted in all available languages. Every NPC speaks and they even have interesting things to say. Honestly, I may be biased here since I'm a huge fan of The Witcher 3, but this one mission was hands down the best one in the game. And when you finally reach the Frostborn expansion, you unlock new equipment, new zones, new gameplay mechanics, and even a few new monsters. I have to criticize the fact that the majority of the monsters are just color swaps of old ones, but what is new is interesting enough still. The expansion scores above all with its sheer length and content. There is so much here. I won't lie, as I reached my 100 hour, I was already pushing for the end, motivated only by the desire to complete the game. The monsters were getting hard to kill at this point. It took me many tries for some of them, and I even found myself forced to look for random teammates and guides on how to kill the harder ones. I was ready to put the game to rest, but I definitely was not ready to stop so close to the finishing line. I had to see those credits. And 10 hours later, after I had reached that point where I was already kind of getting bored with the game, I finally saw the credits a second time around, now for the actual ending of the expansion, and I felt like a weight was lifted from my shoulders. Yes, the game is fun, but boy does it become repetitive. Just as I was about to finally retire my character, I realized that an NPC was having a purple exclamation mark over his head. Those indicate optional content, which is usually challenging, rewarding, and above all, unique. And that's when I realized that this game has no end. It took me a few more hours to finally finish these additional quests as well, and now I was finally done with it. I had killed every monster, I had crafted everything that I wanted to craft, I have explored all the zones. It was finally time for me to put the game to rest, and now I can tell you what I think of Monster Hunter Iceborne overall. In short, it's a flawed masterpiece. In order for you to like it, you have to understand what it is and what it's not. The game is effectively a boss rush. You fight boss after boss, get better gear, and then fight the next one. You learn some patterns, read strategy guides, and team up with people for the purpose of killing more of pretty much the same. That's it. There's a few more things that are unique, like some unique encounters. The majority, however, are mostly very familiar. Once you get over the game's main issues, and it has many of those, and you accept the fact that the story is written by Japanese people who insist on this cringy anime-styled behavior where everyone is a friend and people are weird and cliche and do these strange mannerisms where they scratch the back of their head shyly while they speak to you and stuff, you will be able to ignore it enough to enjoy the game for its good sides. I can safely say that I was right to be afraid of the amount of time Monster Hunter World would steal from me, even with the Defender armor and Defender sword, which were designed to carry you through the main game. It still took me over 100 hours to complete it. I enjoyed myself, but there was also a lot of frustration. Just be aware that you simply can't play through the story with friends who have also just started out. So should you give this game a shot? If you are asking yourself this question after having watched my reviews so far, then you definitely should. It's probably the best of its kind on the market at the moment. At least I can't think of a better boss rush game off the top of my head. With that having been said, I want to thank you for having reached the end of this review. I know it's a lot longer than usual, but it had to be since the game just has a lot of stuff going on for it. I'm also aware that this game is loved by so many and can imagine that a bunch of you have already played it and are now thinking to themselves that they disagree with me, or perhaps you do agree with some of the things I've said. So don't be shy and let me know in the comment section below. Oh, and check out my Patreon page, the link to which you'll find in the description as well. Thank you for watching Game Filter, and I hope to see you on the next one. Until then, have a great day.